It's a Tuesday, and you're looking at a message you sent on Friday. Not ignored, exactly. You can see they read it. You just never got a reply, and somehow that felt almost normal. So you start typing something light to send after it. And then you stop, because you notice it would be the third message in a row with only your name down the side. You put the phone face down. They're busy, you tell yourself. They probably are, and some quiet part of you has already done a different kind of math. Nobody has left. There was no fight, no moment, nothing said. If you laid the evidence out on the table, it would look like almost nothing at all. And yet you can feel the temperature of it. Something that used to run warm is running a few degrees cooler, and it has been for longer than you'd like to admit. So here's the thing worth stopping on. People almost never leave a friendship through the door. They leave through a dimmer switch. They don't end it. They lower it, one unanswered message at a time, so gradually that your eyes adjust and you never catch the room going dark. And the strangest part is there's no villain in it. Not them, not you. So let's actually look at how a person leaves without ever leaving. Start here. The fade is never one decision. It's a long row of tiny non-decisions, and not a single one of them is big enough to be the goodbye. A reply that used to take minutes takes a day. Then it takes 3. Then there's the one that just quietly never comes, and you both let it stand. And every single link in that chain has an alibi. I got swamped. I meant to. I saw it and forgot. Each one is completely true and completely forgivable. That's the whole trick of it, though nobody's running a trick. Nobody ever has to decide to leave. They only have to, each time, slightly not decide to stay. There's the dimmer again. Not a hand slamming a switch off. A hand resting on the dial, easing it down one notch, then walking away and forgetting it's there. And because your eyes adjust to each notch, there's never a moment that feels like the end. There's just a slow, agreed-upon dimming that neither of you names. Which is why, later, you can't point to when it happened. You go looking for the day it ended, and there isn't one. There is no when. That isn't you failing to remember it. It's that the goodbye was never in one place. It was spread so thin across so many days that no single day had to carry it. A slow fade isn't a leaving that happened quietly. It's a leaving cut into pieces small enough that nobody, including the person doing it, ever has to feel the weight of the whole thing. Now watch where the reaching goes, because it tells you everything. Early on, either of you would start it. A message could come from either direction, any day. Then, slowly, without a conversation about it, the starting migrates to one side. It becomes mostly you, and then it becomes only you. Here's the part that keeps you in it. When you do reach, they're warm, genuinely warm. The reply is kind, it's real, there's nothing cold in it at all. So you tell yourself it's fine. And in the moment, it is. The warmth is not a lie. It just never, ever starts on its own anymore. And somewhere in there, quietly, the thing changes shape. You stop being in a friendship. You start operating one. Every meetup is one you arranged. Every thread is one you opened. You're not being met halfway. You're carrying the whole thing across and calling it a friendship because it used to be one. So you start rationing yourself. You hold back the next message, not out of pride exactly, but because you don't want to run the test. Because you already know what the test is. Stop reaching and see how long the silence lasts. And you do not want a number. So you keep reaching a little less each month, and the two of you drift into a strange arrangement where the friendship is technically alive and quietly left on you to keep it that way. And none of this is announced. That's the whole nature of a fade. The terms get rewritten, and nobody ever sits you down to tell you they changed. Which brings us to the real question. If they've quietly gone, why not just say so? Why is a goodbye almost the one thing you never get? And the honest answer is uncomfortable. To say goodbye, you need a reason. You need a grievance, a wound, a scene. And in a slow fade, there isn't one. Nobody wronged anybody. There was no betrayal to point at. There's just a pull that used to be there and slowly went slack. And you cannot make an announcement out of that. Imagine trying. Imagine sitting a good, blameless person down to formally end a friendship that had no fight in it. It would feel absurd. It might even feel cruel. So the fade, strange as it sounds, is the gentle option. It's what leaving looks like when the person leaving has no complaint to make, only a warmth that quietly cooled. And there's something else the fade protects, something you don't like to look at. It protects the story. Technically, you're still friends. Nobody was dumped. There's no scene to replay at 3 in the morning. No last words to regret. Nothing you'd ever have to explain to anyone who asks how the two of you are. The fade keeps everything deniable. Ask either of you directly, and you'd both say, honestly, that nothing happened. You'd both be telling the truth, and you'd both know better. So the last message just gets a stand. Yours, usually. It sits there unanswered, and neither of you ever moves it, because moving it would make the whole thing real. That unmoved message is the closest thing to a headstone a fade ever gets. No date on it. No words. Just the last thing said, left exactly where it landed. And you both, without ever discussing it, agree to leave it there. That silent agreement is the only conversation the ending ever actually gets. So no, you don't get goodbye. But not because they were careless with you. Because a goodbye is a hard, clear minute somebody has to volunteer to stand in, and almost nobody does. And here is where it turns, because I have to be fair with you. That minute nobody volunteers for, you dodged it too. Somewhere on your phone right now, there is a message you haven't answered. From someone who used to matter. Someone you keep meaning to reply to, and keep not. You're not angry with them. There was no fight on your side either. You just felt the pull quietly go slack, the exact way it went slack on the other end of yours. And you didn't decide to leave them. Of course you didn't. You just, each time, slightly didn't reach back. One defensible delay after another. You have an alibi for every one of those delays, and every alibi is true. I was busy. I'd reply properly later. Later never came, and you barely felt it not come. You are, right now, quietly fading out of someone's life. Not cruelly, not on purpose, but you are the dimmer switch in their story, and you have never once felt like a villain. Both things are true at the same time, and you have to hold them together. You're being faded on, and you're fading on someone else. Same hands, same silence. Which changes what the fade even is. It stops being a thing done to you by people who didn't care enough. It becomes just the shape leaving takes when nobody can bear the door. Because the door costs the person leaving. It costs them a hard, honest minute in someone else's face while they say it. The fade doesn't cost them that. The fade moves the cost onto you instead, quietly, in tiny installments spread out over months, so thin that the person leaving barely feels themselves paying it. And that's not because they're heartless. It's because the honest minute is genuinely hard, and human beings are very, very good at not standing in hard minutes. So we all reach for the dimmer instead. Every one of us. It's the most human thing there is, to leave a little at a time and hope the other person's eyes adjust. The slow fade isn't a flaw in a few careless people. It's what almost everyone does when they have to leave and can't find a kind way to say it out loud. So here's the quiet thing I want to leave you with. You keep waiting for a moment of clarity. The conversation, the reason, the closure that makes it all make sense. But the fade was the clarity. The slow version is the answer. The absence of a moment was never a delay in the truth arriving. It was the truth. A friendship that ends in a fade is telling you, in the gentlest way it knows, what it was made of near the end. Not that it was fake, that it had quietly run out of pull. And knowing that doesn't have to make you bitter. Some fades are just the honest close of something that already gave you everything it had to give. But some of them aren't finished. That's the part worth staying awake to. A fade is only truly over when one of you decides it is, and mostly, nobody ever does. Which means the light is often still there. Low, almost gone, but not off. Just waiting on a hand to move the other direction, if a hand ever does. I'm not going to tell you to send a message. That isn't what this is. But notice that somewhere in the last few minutes, a name arrived in your head on its own. You didn't go looking for it. It just showed up and sat down. And, without checking, exactly which kind of name it is. Maybe it's someone quietly fading out of your life, and you've been feeling the room go dim for a while now, without letting yourself say so. Or maybe, and this one is harder, it's someone you're fading out of. Someone whose last message is still sitting on your phone, waiting on a hand that keeps not moving. You know which one it is. You knew before I finished the sentence. That's the whole test, and it already ran itself while you were listening. So I'll just leave the name where it is. Warm, or cooling, or somewhere in between. Sitting there quietly, the way it's been sitting for a while now. Because the slow fade only stays a fade for as long as both of you keep your hands off the dial. And you just noticed yours is resting right on it. Which way it turns, if it turns at all, was never really the point of this. The point is that you can feel it under your fingers now. You know the light is still there.